Good evening all, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here. And just looking around the room, the amount of creativity in clay modelling, poster making, videoing, drama, the poetry group, the arts group, and much, much more. And all of the creativity helping us to focus on that one issue of socio-economics and discrimination that goes with it. So you're all very, very welcome. And I hope by now you've had a chance to have a look or to feel the book. It is beautiful. The book arose from a group when the initial lockdown hit, wishing to stay in contact, wishing to share their stories, the bright side and the dark side, wishing to be creative, and like the rest of humanity, wishing to stay sane, and also wishing to gift their wisdom and their truth to the wider society. And as Paul says, I think in the introduction, they were much more than a writers' group. And certainly the very generous writers who gifted their poems to this book are gifting us insights into humanity. The poems may not be as long as epics, but I think taken together, it is an epic. And I think the book, it's fitting that it's launched here in the North Wall. If you're familiar with the famine statues, beside the famine statues is a small sculpture of a pair of shoes. Those little shoes represent one landlord in Roscommon who over a number of months managed, if that's the right word, to move 12,000 people off his land and to walk the canal that's still there. It took them 6 days. The people that the story is told in the epic were desperate. The writers in this book may not be desperate, but they are struggling with a different type of lockdown. I was impressed in reading the foreword that Paul referenced a poem at the Garden of Remembrance. He referenced the Proclamation of Independence. What struck me was, of the 7 signatories, 3 were poets. Tomás MacDonagh, Joseph Mary Plunkett and Patrick Pearse. And again, pointing at that bridge, once you cross the bridge, that's where Patrick Pearse was from. It's now Pearse Street. And the school he went to is still the school that's there, Westland Row. Being a poet can be a dangerous business. It ruffles. And I love the little bits of ruffling that goes on inside and the cover of the book here. So to each of the creative writers, to each of the artists, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your creativity, because you help us to see and you help us to feel in our hearts something different.
Working class people have always recorded our lives through stories. Sometimes these stories are written down, and sometimes in order to write them at all, we need to come together as a group to seek validation from each other. When we come together, we see our stories in others, and we see that we have a story that's shared. Working class writing tends to be collectively orientated, and the writing group can be a powerful place. So even looking around here today, I noticed that a lot of the poems reference a we or an us or a together, rather than an I or a me. It can transform personal shame and stigma into a collective cry for justice. And for the past few years, as part of the Working Class Writing Archive, we've been trying to collect and preserve and create a library of working class writing in Ireland and in Dublin specifically. Working class creative writing speaks to the emotional life of class and adds to our understanding of how we experience it and how it's lived. That our feelings are a concretely embodied outcome of an unequal economic system. So our writing provides us with this reflective space where we can get our power back and speak on how we've been made to feel. And exhibits and books like we see here today show us how negative feelings can be transformed, how we can experience class differently once we come together as a community of voices to start telling it like it is.
As part of the Lockdown Liberties project, we were invited to write about Brendan's creativity. Brendan, who was a great friend to many of us, he was a community activist, and he initiated the Acorn group in Ballymun. So sadly, Brendan is no longer with us. And in Ballymun, before we knew him, he campaigned for a new community centre and a new church in Poppintree. Much later, he told us, when speaking about the community centre, to build a community centre is good, but what you really need more than ever is to build community between people. Brendan added to that, we've discovered that if we could bring our experience and our intelligence together, we can be heard and get things to change. He was convinced that people living in poverty, politicians, and other actors in society should work together. He knew the challenge was to learn to speak up and speak out. We've learnt so much from Brendan and Acorn, and in the years ahead, many younger people will be inspired by the work that you're all taking a lead in now, and this exhibition is an example. This is a creative process, so we don't necessarily know what's coming, but in different ways, very different ways, however we are involved, we are working to be creators of a world without poverty, a world that leaves no one behind.
There's another piece there that it was made as a team. This was inspired by the mural by Mountjoy Park. Tara, Gavin, and I worked on it. I believe that it not only represents us being of different backgrounds, that is, if it wasn't for this art workshop we had the opportunity to participate in, thanks to ATD, our path would not have ever crossed. But here we are, united as part of one race, one world. I'd invite you all to get involved and help us be part of the change, be part of the one world.
The other piece we created, which was inspired by Philip's broken picture, the broken step at the base of the ladder represents the difference between being born privileged and being born into poverty. We would not choose to be born into poverty, but if we were, the obstacles and hidden dimensions of poverty deprive us of the energy that one needs to live a full and productive life. A sense of hopelessness instead of hopefulness permeates. The hands in the workpiece represent those who see all of humanity as one race and the same regardless of race, sex, religion, birthplace, etc., and who wish to see a better and more equitable world, helping someone start the journey. You see the two hands helping another person up the ladder and over that one broken step. The top of the ladder represents a safe and beautiful place of tranquility, where everyone is invited to participate. It is the goal we should remember is very difficult to set, goals that lift us up, if the environment that we live in accepts poverty as simply a fact of life. If one of us is poor, then all of us are a little poorer.
I came to Ireland 20 years ago, and I've had 3 children. I've gone through education, colleges. I've attended many colleges. I can mention up to 10. I did all that, having babies, working full-time and studying part-time most of the time. For me, the pain that I suffer is the pain that I want to spare others.
When I got this book into my hands, the first thing that struck me was its quality. The production honours the words of the poets. It's beautiful. So well done. There's probably a whole team of people between the writers, the proofreaders, people that do the photography, all that sort of stuff. Well done to each of you. It's a fantastic book. This is a book for reflection. 10 days ago, on the 17th of October, out there at the Human Rights and Poverty Stone, 3 of the poems were read aloud. These poems are there to be expressed in public, to be proclaimed. Again, I thank the authors and the poets for risking that and for gifting us. I loved what Senator Rowan said in the foreword. She said she had no time for poetry until one certain poem struck her. She welled up, she was moved. That changed her life. So she said poetry is both a mirror and a validation. And I think in this volume we have been gifted mirrors and validations. I will quote some words from Michael D. Higgins, who gifted his wisdom to the book. He said, "Take care, reclaim our shared humanity, hold firm and come together." And there's no way I could finish without calling on one of the poets, and that's Andrew, to read his poem. The poem is called Depression, but it's one of the most uplifting poems I've heard in a long time. So Andrew, if you would like to read the poem, and that could be the formal launch of the book, please. You have a copy there.
Choose which face to put on, rather than depression. Choose to wear a smile, if only for a while. Throw away your mask, and know that this life is a task. A task to get through this day. Just chin up, I am here to stay. Just reach out to me, live your life and be happy. Before lockdown hit, my father-in-law died, and I went months and months just continuing working and holding stuff in, and it eventually became like a volcano, and that's why I made a volcano over there. And eventually all of it just erupted out of me. I didn't want to be here, and I did want to be here because of my kids. So it was like mental torture. And I wasn't allowed to cry because growing up, people say men aren't allowed to cry, they're not allowed to feel, they're not allowed to show emotions. You have to be strong for your kids or your wife or your family. And now I can cry walking down the street, I can cry in front of my wife, I can talk to her about problems that I'm facing. And that poem is a reach out to all men that feel the same way that I did. This book saved my life. This group saved my life. So yeah, that's basically what it did for me. So thanks very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What I liked about the exhibition today was I liked the inclusion of the recitations and the poetries and the songs. I liked the simplicity of the book, and in that simplicity there's a power, I think, in the book. I like the fact that it's all over the room. It's for everybody to see, that there's plenty of interest, there's plenty to move around to. I like the mix of guests. I love the location. And I like the fact that there's lots more going on. It's not just about the book today, but there's reference to the 17th of October, there's reference to the SDGs, there's reference to poverty facts, and there's also a great mix of people. And the fact that it's here all week is something to be worth, to be looked at as well, I think, for as long as we can.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, it's exactly what one wants, to hear people's voices, and we don't hear it often enough. And it also shows people's creativity. I've always believed that art, poetry, creativity is a key bit in community development. And we sometimes lose sight of that, I think, and just think it's all just about income or money, but I think this bit is about people.
it's really amazing to see what coming together as a collective and providing that space can actually just really transform something that was a negative emotion into something powerful and hopeful and full of action. You can tell that people are moving forward and want things to change, and it's just incredible to see, and fair play to you.
It's a wonderful exhibition. The creativity, the colour, the poems, just the way it's all come together. So I think it's really lovely. And just the way people were speaking about the pieces and why they did them, just really important, and I think it'd be great to see more people get to see it, and appreciate the work that people have done.
It's beautiful to be here, actually. I mean, looking at all the lovely, beautiful display. The artists are really talented, and they brought out their story. It's sober, but it's also something you appreciate the talent and the thought behind the work. Yeah, so it's good to be here today.
A lot of work has gone over the last year and a half into creating all this, because it's the book, the film, the poems, the clay, the reflections, and as David said, during some of the workshops, people came together that would usually in life don't come together, and I really liked the launch because we heard the voices of the people who created the poems and people who reflected on the whole thing. You never know what you're going to create until you start, and I really liked, I'd never done it before, and I really liked the process and see what other people were doing with the same clay. It was such an amazing project because everything was so different.
But the one thing about today is that we're all getting our voice heard, and a voice being heard is better than a voice being hidden away.
I'm glad I came. It was something I wouldn't have missed because of all the work we put together.
I am very happy. I never thought I could ever be an exhibitionist. These are my hands, very colorful, just like my personality, very colorful. This is it. It is more than what I imagined, ever dreamed of. Incredible. I'm out of words to describe it, really. The work of everybody, I mean, we became artists without knowing it, and the writers, and it's just amazing. Everything. Very happy to be here.
Emma spoke of working class writers. I think it's very important what she said, that it's a part of creativity that hidden from literature in Ireland, and it should change. So really, it was a great chance to be here today.
From my perspective, it's wonderful to see those who have lived the experience and really share with us who haven't, but include us in that sense of community. And I think that is what makes it worthwhile for me, is that you're part of it. It's not that you're outside looking in, but you're inside now looking out at what it really is, and then can you make a difference? And I think what you guys have put together here is just fantastic. It's a beautiful story. Well done.
To paint the pictures of what this really means to me, and the confidence that this is after giving me, which has been immense, and to see everybody come together from all different backgrounds, some addicts, some living in poverty, some from high class ends. That's unbelievable. Now this girl, she's 3 years old and she has a piece in an art exhibition. Imagine what she's going to conquer in life, and trust me, I'll be there every step of the way pushing her to achieve great things, because I want her to have a life that I didn't have. So yeah.
The next Van Gogh.
Say thank you. Thank you.
Get hold of it.
Say thank you.
Thank you.